So the other day I was scrolling through Google when I came across this picture of a gecko that was fossilized in amber. I decided to take a closer look at this research article and found that it was said to be a 53 million year old gecko called the Yantaro gecko balticus unearthed in Russia. I've always loved topics like this and discoveries such as this, but every time I see it, I would always raise a few questions like, for example, how did it get there? Is it all facts? Why is it so important? And how did the people that found this come to these conclusions? Today, we're going to examine two main ideas that have sought to answer questions like this for a very long time, and that is creationism and evolutionism. Hi, my name is Vincent. As I have mentioned before, I've always been intrigued by the prehistoric world ever since I was young. However, as I got older and gained more views on religions and different sources, I wanted to dive deeper and do better research to explain these things better. And so I'd like to share with you today what I found. We're going to look at three main aspects of these two beliefs today, starting with their beginnings, moving on to their beliefs and arguments, and lastly talking about their impacts on society today. Let's start with their beginnings. I like to specify first with creationism that because so many religions today agree with the idea of creationism, that I'm going to specifically be talking about the creationist view of Christianity because I only have so much time to explain. So, the ideology of creationism began with figures such as St. Augustine of Hippo, Thomas Aquinas, and later theologians like John Calvin, so all the way back in the age of antiquity. Modern creationism started with a man named George McGready Price, who advocated for a global flood and other creationist beliefs during a time of fossil evidence and evolutionist beliefs. This paved the way for rising theologians such as John Whitcomb and Henry Morris to strengthen further the belief of creationism in the modern age. Fundamental ideas of evolution also began very early with philosophers like Aristotle, John Ray, as well as Georges Louis Leclerc. Now, all of these ideals and beliefs eventually culminated together into one man who would push evolutionism to the forefront of the science world, and that is Charles Darwin. He would be the one to publish On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life in 1859, and this would shape the world of science and society for ages to come. As we now know, these beliefs have been in history for a very long time, but let's look at their fundamental beliefs and principles next. In order to move through this section smoothly, we're going to look at a few essential topics that have been questioned for a long time on the topic of origins and how these two particular groups seek to answer them. The concept of creation that we are talking about stems from the Bible, the holy book of Christianity, so we're going to start with the topic of God. Now, in his book, What's True About Christianity, Don Thorson discusses creation and evolution from a Christian standpoint. He lays out the Christian belief, regardless of the interpretation of Genesis, as the belief that God, ultimately speaking, created the universe and people from nothing. With evolution, most who hold this belief would say that God is simply incompatible with evolution. In 2015, Guillermo Pazzi-Muñoz wrote in his article, Evolution Controversy, a phenomenon prompted by the incompatibility between science and religious beliefs, that scientific rationalism and empiricism are incompatible with belief in supernatural causation. We therefore can conclude that there is a big contrast in the belief of the divine creator in terms of creationism and evolutionism, and it's that creationism believes in a divine and supreme God, and evolutionists, well, don't. We then move on to the age of the earth. Generally, creationists use biblical genealogies as well as archaeological discoveries to estimate the age of the earth to be around 6,000 to 10,000 years old. Now, in contrast to this, in a 1981 debate between creationist Dr. Duane Gish and evolutionist Dr. Russell Doolittle, the evolutionist advocated Dr. Russell Doolittle stated that the earth should be in there at somewhere around 4.6 times 10 to the 9th, and that is around 4.6 billion years old, and so we see a clear contrast in the age of the earth as well. Now, finally, let's observe how changes occur according to these two ideas. Because with creationists believe in God who designed everything, they also believe that everything was designed with a purpose and a cause. Creationists reject the idea of macroevolution in the sense that beings can evolve outside of their kinds. They believe that due to the natural order, things can only evolve within their kinds. Now, with the evolution, in contrast to this, they have their atheistic foundation, which means that God or any supernatural being had no interaction with the natural order, which means that everything most likely happened by chance and numbers. Now, these chances can continue to happen throughout time, and therefore the natural law can be broken and can be renewed into something else, therefore evolving and creating something entirely new over time. Finally, I would like to apply these beliefs of these two ideas and take a look at how they impact the world today. As I have stated before, several principles of of Darwin's on the origin of species have found, used, shaped, and transformed the science realm and thereafter. And one of these is social Darwinism. Now, social Darwinism is Anglophone academic journals, a contribution to the history of the term, written by G. Hodson in 2004, defines social Darwinism as the general doctrine of the gradual appearance of new forms through variation, the struggle of superabundant forms, the elimination of those poorly fitted, and the survival of those better fitted to the given environment. The theory of evolution has also found its place in the very core of education. According to Teaching Evolution in U.S. Public Schools, a continuing challenge, written by Eric Plutzer in 2020, more than 95% of high school biology teachers reported covering evolution at least to some degree in both years 2007 and 2009. With creation, although not as prominent in schools and education, it still serves as a strong backbone for religious and cultural identity. Creationism has motivated the establishment of also many different organizations, such as Answers in Genesis and Institute for Creation Research, to dive deeper and find more evidence for creation. Overall, it has sparked the minds of many to think critically more about the relations between science and faith and how they could potentially coexist. Today, we've explored two very powerful ways of understanding life: creationism and evolutionism. We have discussed the origin of the explanation of origins and the basis of their beliefs, as well as their impact on the world today. New discoveries are being made daily in both camps, and the debate rages on. Science is really an important part of our society and shapes much more than just the things within its own community. It can ultimately impact the way we live, the way we act, and the way we think. Religion and faith, whether we stand on one end of the spectrum or the other, can impact our lives in more ways than we think. Thank you.